Hey guys, this is the 2022 November paper. I'm just going to look at question number 3, the object-oriented programming question. This question took me about 20 minutes to complete. So that means in exam conditions when you guys are stressed out, even if you know all your work, you can expect that a question like this will take you about 40 minutes at best, maybe even a little bit longer. But what I'm doing here is I'm just scoping out the question, having a look at what's available to me. I can't really start the question until I know what's what, so I'm busy looking at the different private variables that supply to me, reading what each one does, trying to figure out what each data type is. Fortunately, in this question paper, they give us the data types. As you can see, it's all written over there. So I'm just getting my mind around it, trying to form a mental picture of what's what, so I can start with the constructor. So here they tell me that this needs to receive the plant code as a parameter, the number of panels as a parameter, and the power per panel as a parameter. Just those three, nothing to do with season. They actually mention further in the question there that we need to give season a default attribute. That means that season is not going to be included as one of the parameters, as you'll see shortly. One of the mistakes that I see students make all the time is they just make parameters for all the private variables. But that's actually incorrect. I'm not quite sure if you lose marks for it. You might. But it's not correct. You just need to follow the instructions. They will tell you explicitly you need to make parameters for this, this, and this, like they did in this question, right? They mentioned them by name. So you just do what they tell you to do. I often find that students don't read the question. They read it once and then they think they're good and then just assume the rest. But go back, read the question again. Halfway through the question, go back and read it again. So there I declared my constructor, Control Shift C to get the method stub. And now we start. So this is how you do every single constructor. Your F variable is equal to your parameter. Your F variable is equal to your parameter. Your F variable is equal to your parameter. Not the other way around. It's very easy to get confused then. You lose all those marks. So this is usually like a 5-mark question. It's 5 easy marks as far as I'm concerned. There's no logical difficulty in here. You just need to do what you've been told. And of course you need to know how to do it. But you should know how to do that. So there we see F season is equal to summer. So it's getting a default value. That means we're giving it. It's got nothing to do with any parameters. And I just did what they told me to do. Next question. So we need to make a method called increment number of panels. And I'm trying to figure out now, is this going to be a procedure or a function? So I'm looking for some keywords, right? So there you can see I'm saying, okay, they want a parameter. So I need to receive one. They say increase F number of panels. That tells me this is a procedure. Whenever we are increasing or changing the value of a private variable or one of the F variables, then you know it's a procedure, not a function. So first thing I do is I figure that out, say, okay, this is a procedure. I give it a name, and then I try and figure out, are there any parameters? And as we can see, there is one parameter. They don't tell us what, they just say increase. So we look at what's the procedure about, talking about the number of panels. So we must be getting the number of panels as a parameter. I always call my parameter variables, I add a P in front of it so that I know that it is a parameter, just so I don't get confused. Remember, the parameter values are coming from the main program. That's going to happen later. Don't worry about it. Just assume that all the parameters, the P variables, just assume that they already have values. You can see there, they asked us to increment F number of panels. So there's 2 ways you can do it. The way that I'm doing it now in the comments is probably the way you're most familiar with. So just go ahead and do it that way. No problem. Next one, a mutator method. So mutators are almost always procedures, right? So you just already know. But I go ahead and I read the rest of the question just to make sure. Receive as a parameter, so we need another parameter there. And they say set the F season. So that's a giveaway. That now we know it's a procedure, it's not a function. So I'll go there, say procedure, give it a name. Double check what was the name, set season. And now I see, okay, what parameters? Are there any parameters? Yes, they tell us. Again, they don't say what, they just say a parameter to get a value. And because the procedure is about the season, well, we must be getting the season then. So we call it p season, and that's a string. It's a string because the f variable, the private variable, is also a string. So this is a simple set method. That means f season, your f variable, is equal to your p variable. It's like a constructor. I don't know if you guys ever figured that one out, but a set method is pretty much an extension of a constructor. It's pretty much do the same thing. Next one, we have a big one here. This is a auxiliary method. Calculate capacity, and again, I'm looking for keys now. Is this going to be a procedure or a function? Looks like I figured out there. Return. Whenever they say return a value, you know it's a function. You can just stop reading right away, go and start writing function, give it a name, and now I need to figure out what data type is it going to be returning. They tell there result is going to be a real value, as you can see there highlighted. So I know that our function is going to give us back a real. Now I'm trying to figure out what they're asking me to do here. Determine the number of hours per day. So it looks like each season, obviously summer has more sun than winter. So the number of hours, that's what they want. How many hours of sunlight per day? If it's summer, it's going to be 10. If it's winter, it's going to be 6, and so on. And then we need to use the number of panels, which we have a private variable. The power per panel, we have private variable. And then the hours per day, which we're going to figure out now from this table. So Control-Shift-C, get my method stub. And now I need to use some sort of if statement to assign the number of hours per day. I can't use a case statement because f season is a string, and case statements can only work with chars and integers. So I have to use a series of if statements for this one. And you're going to see here in a second, I'm just going to copy and paste because all 4 of them pretty much have the same code. You just change 1 or 2 words. So if f season is equal to summer, what are we going to do? We're going to say, we're going to do this whole calculation, right? There you can see the calculation there. GC is equal to, so result, remember result because we have a function. So result is equal to number of panels. What is number of panels? It's f number of panels multiplied by power per panel, and we can get that from the private variable f power per panel. If you have information available to you that's in a private variable, always use the private variable first. Multiplied by 10 because it is summer. So I'm just going to copy and paste this if statement now 4 times, and I'm just going to change the season to the different ones. Right? Next one there, winter. Result is equal to the same. The only thing that changes here is the number of hours. So instead of 10, 6. Super simple. Next one, autumn. And that's going to be 8 hours. You can see it. We're asking the same thing. We're saying, look, if f season is equal to winter, then your calculation needs to be multiplied by 6. It's the same calculation for all of them. The only difference is how many hours of sunlight they can expect per day. So there we have it. And obviously, because these are in if statements, the results will only happen for one if statement. Can't happen for all of them. Last thing that we have to do here is a toString, and a toString should always be 3 marks. If you're losing marks in a toString, that means you didn't study, or study enough at least. So it's always a function, and it always returns a string, and you basically just do it the way they want it over there. So result is equal to, and they want a heading there, plant code, and then they want the actual plant code. And where do you get this information from? You get it from the f variables. The point of the toString function is to return the value of the private f variables. So you shouldn't be referring to other variables or parameters in this one. You should just be displaying your private f variables. So I'm literally just doing it as the instructions ask me here, as I see in the picture, number of panels, and then they want the number of panels, obviously, which is a integer. F number of panels is an integer, so I need to convert that to a string. You write this as if you are writing in a rich edit. Right? Just pretend that you're displaying in a rich edit, and you code the exact same way. #9s if you need them, #13s or #10s. As you can see, I'm using #13s here to make new lines. and you just add one big string. It's really simple. A grade 12 should be able to do it, no problem. Now, and then the last one there is the season, and that's going to come from F season. So you can see they're all F variables, our private variables from our class. And this wraps up the class, all done and dusted. Now we move on to the main program, to the main form. Right, and this is 3.2, and all OOP questions, they follow the same format. First you sort out the class, then you move on to the main form. So we're probably going to instantiate, they say there, and you know the problem with these external exams is the names of the components are so horrible to type out. It takes like 10 minutes just to type one of those names out. So you're going to see I'm going to try a few ways to see if how can I copy the name instead of typing it. I'm going to mess up a little bit, but eventually I'll get it, because I just don't want to type this out. It's just too tedious, these underscores. Yeah, I tried to copy the name from the structure, but it's not going to work though. It's going to give me a whole bunch of stuff. So we make a variable. They asked us specifically in this question to extract the values. Usually that means they want you to make a variable for it. Some people like to just straight up call the constructor. You can see that I'm messing up a bit, but just ignore it. You can see most people, they like to call the constructor and just put the components themselves straight in to the constructor. That's fine, it works, no problem. But because they specifically asked to extract, that might mean that there are marks allocated for making variables. So just to be on the safe side, I'm going to make some variables here. Then the number of panels, as we know, is an integer. inum panels, right? The names of your variables don't really matter as long as they are short and descriptive and you understand what they. You can see there for power, I just say power. I'm not going to write power of panels. It's unnecessary. Okay, there we go. So you can see there I figured out a relatively simple way to copy the names. Just go to the quick edit, copy and paste. I realized here that, oh, this is not a variable. I'm sorry, this is not an edit box. This is a spin edit, so I don't have to convert it from a string to an int. I can just say dot value. And the last one, because that is a real, I'm going to have to convert that from a string to a float. There we go. And now we call our constructor. This should also be 3 marks. Maybe you forgot how to make the constructor in the previous questions and you lost those marks. That's still, you know, I can still understand that. But yeah, in this question, you should be able to call your constructor. It's almost exactly the same for every single exam paper. You just fill in the blanks now. So object plant is equal to, you shouldn't be messing this up really. Object plant is equal to the name of your class, tsolarpowerplant.create, and now you list them in order. So in your constructor, in your class, if you listed plant code first, then you must give the plant code first here. Number of panels was second, so we give number of panels second, same order. And then they want the toString, which again is 3 marks. So they want us to display that in the rich edit. So we'll say red q3.lines.add, and we'll call the name of our object, which is object plant, obj plant, dot toString. Just like that, nothing else. We did all the work previously already. We already sorted out what it's going to look like. Now we can see, I think I'm going to run up to an area. This is not our fault. This is because the computer that I'm doing this on uses a full stop instead of a decimal point. You won't get this problem in an exam. You really shouldn't. Your teacher will take care of it. But if you get this at home, because your computer has different settings, you can see I'm just going to add one line here. Don't worry, this is not part of the exam. You don't need to know how to do this. This is just going to make sure that it sets a full stop as my decimal separator instead of a comma. And that should fix my problem. There we go. And that's the first one done. So we can move on to the second one. That was 6 marks already in the bag. They say, it's nice, this one they have bullet points, so you just follow the bullet points really. they say extract the value of the spin edit. Okay, so that's what we'll do first then. Just trying to figure out what's going on. So there I go and copy, because I'm too lazy to type it out. Copy the name of the component. And again, I'm making a variable for it because they asked in the question very specifically, they said extract the value. So just to be on the safe side, I'm going to extract it by putting it into a variable. So we have the number of panels there. There's an integer. And that's going to be equal to the spin edit. It's very straightforward. We just got to read the question and really just do what they say. There's not much to say about that. Now they want us to call not a procedure. They want us to call a method that we made previously. The work is already done. We did it in the previous set of questions. Now we just need to use it. So we always call the name of our object first, then the name of our method, and this method has a parameter that needs to be filled. All right, now this could be a little bit of a trick question. When you first look at this, you think, oh, do I need to call the toString? But it's not. They only want the plant code and they only want the number of panels. So I just went and I checked what do they have available to us here. I can see this was part of the provided code. They have the get plant code and the get number of panels. So we're going to use those two functions provided to us to generate this display. That's what they want us to do. They're basically testing, do you understand what a get method does? Right? We're going to use it now. This is what it's there for. And they also want to just double check if we know how to use our class and use methods that we didn't necessarily create ourselves. So I'm writing the heading there as I see in the picture. All right, always looking at our reference picture for clues. And there we go. We call our object plant.getPlantCode. And this is on a second line. Exact same thing. I'm just calling the next one, number of panels. Number of panels gives us an integer. And so we need to convert that to a string before we can display it. There we go. So let's check, does that work? First we click the first button, then the second button we can see there, and that looks just like it does in the picture. Perfect. We can move on. Right, update the season. So we need to extract something from the combo box. Again, a very tedious name there, which I'm just going to copy and paste somewhere. Extract, so I'm going to make a variable for it. Yeah, there's the name, copy that name, go into the button and make a variable for it. The season is a string, so we're going to make a string variable there to hold the season. And then I'm going to show you two ways that you can extract from a combo box. The first way that I'm going to do it is the most correct way, and it is the safest way as a programmer. The second way that you'll see in comments is the easiest way. I suppose you just say .text, still acceptable, you'll still get your marks. But in a real world scenario, .text does leave a window for the user to mess with your program a little bit. But it doesn't really matter for our reasons. So either way is fine. Right, so we need to update the season. So we're going to call the setSeason method that we made. Again, we call the name of our object first. You always start with that. If you want to use your class, you always first call your object. Then you say dot and you refer to the method you want to use. And we give it the season there so we can update it. I think they're asking us to now redisplay the toString. Yeah, updated information. So we're going to say object plant.toString. Again, we did the work for toString previously, so we just call it. Yeah, we're basically calling the code we did in the previous questions to execute here where we want it. There's the one, summer. I think it's on another line there. But I'm just checking the picture here. I see they used winter. So I'm also going to try and use winter. Update season, and there we go. Right, it looks now exactly like the picture looks. Right, so we're moving on to our last question now. I mean, we're pretty much done. If we could get this far, then we can finish the last part. So it took me a few seconds to figure out what exactly do they want here. They want us to write out their text there, the maximum generation capacity per day in winter. And obviously winter comes from, we can't write winter, we have to get the season, depending on what season they're using. And then we need to call the calculate capacity method, as they say, and we need to display it basically as a string with the kilowatt at the end. So I decided, let me just make one string variable. I'm going to see you in a second. And by the way, if you've never seen this before, you can declare variables between the begin and end, but you have to say var for every single one. So I just declared a string variable there so I can just create my long message and then just display that at the end. So there I'm just checking what do I have to write. Maximum capacity per day in, and then we have to get the season. So where can we get the season? Once again, we have a provided code. So you see the provided code that they gave us in the beginning, we just ignored it back then, but we actually used it all. So it was there for a reason. So we're using the get season method that they gave to us with the code, and we're adding it to our message. Yeah, we're going to add hash 13 because it looks like it's on another line. I think I was just going by the picture there. And I'm just going to spread this out a bit so it's not going off the side of the page. Okay, and our function here, calculate capacity, does return a real, if you remember, from 3.1. There we go, we can see that function returns a real. So we have to convert it from a float to a string. I double checked the question. They did not ask for us to round it off. So there's no float to string f or round to, nothing like that. We just say float to string. And we add the kW at the end. And that is it. The whole question is done. I don't know if I'm going to run the program yet just to double check, but that's it, guys. So this is the 2022 November paper. As I said, you can find it on EC Exams. Go ahead and download it for yourself. Try your hand at it. I think it's decent practice. If you can do this kind of question on your own, yes, obviously, if it's your first time, you struggle, do corrections, but get to a point where you can redo this entire question on your own and you understand the code, because that means you'll be able to use it in another question.